Hello, welcome to the Live to 110 podcast. My name is Wendy Myers, and you can find me at my website, live to110.com, and learn about my healing and detox program, mineralpower.com. You can also watch the video podcast with me and the guests talking, debating back and forth on my YouTube channel, Wendy Live to 110, and look at it on the corresponding blog post on my website. Today we have Susan Luschas on the podcast. Such an amazing guest. I really learned a lot on this podcast. I think it's really one of my more fascinating interviews. We're going to be talking about ZYTO and Cyberscan technologies and how those can help you to heal allergies and find the right supplements for you, the right essential oils, truly customizing your supplement protocol and finding out what health issues you have. It can detect methylation issues and infections you might have in your body. Really, really fascinating stuff. And seems like a fairly simple technology at that. So we're going to be discussing that on the podcast today. Please keep in mind that this program is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or health condition and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. The Live to 110 podcast is solely informational in nature, so please consult your health practitioner before engaging in any treatment that we may suggest today on the show. So the detox fact of the day on the podcast is the toxins that can be found in mercury amalgam fillings. I know I had these were put in my mouth when I was 5 years old, and I had them removed when I was 20 years old, strictly for cosmetic reasons, but unbeknowingly I did it for my health as well. But a lot of my clients and a lot of listeners, you have mercury fillings, and they cause a lot of health problems. They don't just have mercury in them. They also have tin. They also have silver, and silver kills gut bacteria. They also have aluminum, and some of them can also contain palladium, which is as toxic as mercury. And so all these metals, they're amalgams. It's not just mercury in the amalgams. It's an amalgam of various metals. When you're biting down on these metals, they leach into your body and cause various health problems. The aluminum and mercury, these are neurotoxins. Like I said, tin, that's a mitochondrial poison. It poisons your mitochondria's ability to make energy. Really a lot of different health problems can be caused by these metals, and what I use my Mineral Power program to detox my clients, and I always recommend that people have their mercury amalgams removed and replaced with other fillings. Ideally you want to go to a biological dentist to have this done properly. You do not want a regular dentist that isn't aware of the dangers or doesn't care about the dangers to be drilling these metals out of your mouth without the benefits of suction or removal while that process is happening. So do some homework and hopefully get those mercury amalgams removed. Doing your health a big favor. Our guest today, Susan Luschas, is a PhD, and she's an MIT trained scientist and engineer. She was forced to apply her critical thinking skills to debug her own family's health problems, and she spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of her life on doctors' experiments and research trying to heal her family's health and her own health. And she didn't stop until her family finally achieved radiant health. And doctors started sending her unhealable patients, and the saga continues. She created her own website, debugyourhealth.com, and she publishes everything that she knows for free on her website. Really amazing resource. She's very, very knowledgeable. So go visit her at debugyourhealth.com. Susan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story so the listeners can kind of get a feel for, who you are and what you're about.
Sure. So I am actually an MIT trained scientist and engineer. I got my bachelor's, master's, and PhD from MIT in engineering and science, and went on to a high-tech career. Long story short, my oldest child became chronically ill, and no one could figure it out. We went all over the country, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, tried everything, and basically ended up right where we started or a little worse. So at that point, the doctors basically said, well, institutionalize her and get back to work and live on. And so I said, well, it's my child, so I may as well give it a try. So that's kind of what I did. We had already tried Western, Eastern, homeopathic, all kinds of things. So I kind of stopped working on my normal job slowly and started working on figuring out what the heck was wrong with her and how to fix it. And actually, I tried a lot of things. If they said stand on your head, it might help. We stood on our head, it might help. As long as it made somewhat sense to me, we tried it. And so what I did over the last year, I've been working on a website with video content that basically summarizes all of our hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of trials and experiments and research and what worked and what didn't. Very open about it, very honest about it. I'm not making any money off of any of this. I don't represent any company. I don't even take referral links. So I just have a very unbiased, independent view of the things that worked and the things that didn't. And the kind of issues we looked at included autism, allergies, Lyme, parasites, dental infections, methylation, chelation, all kinds of things. So that's what it is. And the website just launched a month ago, January 2016. And just getting that launched and getting back to my normal, quote unquote, job, which is high-tech, clean tech engineering. So that's my summary and my story.
How is your daughter doing today?
Oh, she's great. Actually, sorry, we've got an airplane going by here.
No,
it's fine. She's doing great. She's in a mainstream third grade classroom at the top of her class. When I tell people who meet us now, if I get into the story, they don't believe me. They don't believe she was ever autistic. They don't believe she was ever couldn't walk. They don't believe anything. So it's great. It's cool. It's actually cool that they don't believe me. So she's doing great. She has a little sister. The little sister, never had any problems. But then again, she's 3 years younger and was on a different track than my older one. We also know that you give most of your heavy metals and toxins to your firstborn, not your secondborn. So that probably had something to do with it. And the 3 tick bites probably also had something to do with it on the older one. So.
Yeah. So she had Lyme as well, correct?
Yeah. And she's had Lyme at least twice that we know of, maybe 3 times.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So you had quite a battle on your hands. And that's how a lot of people become educated and get into health, and turn their new career into health, or a second career in your case, because they're exasperated with the doctors and know intuitively they're not getting the right answers and have to educate themselves and take matters into their own hands, that's exactly what I had to do as well. So you, talk a lot about on your website about different technologies and different therapies and whatnot. So, we're going to talk today about the ZYTO Cyberscan technologies. So what's your background on these technologies, and, what do you feel makes you qualified to speak about them?
Sure. So we've been doing ZYTO for about 4 years on our family of 4. I actually calculated it right before this podcast. We've done a total of 61 ZYTO scans, which in practitioner bills is about $9,000 worth of bills. On Cyberscan, we've only been doing Cyberscan for about a year, or a little less than a year. We've done 30 scans, which is about $6,000 in practitioner bills. And before that, we did 2 earlier versions of BioSet, or biocommunication feedback technologies, which were kind of more the old school technologies. And we did about 15 scans or treatments there, which is another $2,000. So we've done, if you add all that up, you're at about $17,000 worth of practitioner bills on ZYTO, Cyberscan, and a little bit of the old school BioSet. We are purely patients. I don't work for ZYTO or Cyberscan. I don't necessarily endorse their products. I'm completely independent. I don't take any referral links, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just a patient who's done this a lot. And over time, I've learned what's good about the technology technologies and what's not so good about the technologies, and how to use the results and kind of what to expect. And a lot of people have come to me and said, well, the CyberScan or ZYTO, I'm interested, but what is it, and how does it help, and what can I expect? And so that's why I wrote this on my website. I wrote what's good about it, what's bad about it, and how to use and interpret the results. Mm-hmm. So I'm basically a patient with lots of experience, and I have an independent voice and can offer an independent review of these technologies.
Yeah. So what is the difference? Like, what is the difference between the ZYTO and the CyberScan?
Okay. So there are a couple of differences. Let me start with ZYTO. So ZYTO has a hand cradle, and you have to put your hand on this mouse type thing that has a little pad for every finger. And ZYTO then sends signals to your finger and measures what comes back. And the whole time you keep your hand on this hand cradle. In that technology, apparently the body kind of stops responding after so many signals going back and forth. The body kind of says, I'm tired, I'm just not responding anymore. So ZYTO is kind of only good for a finite amount of things you're looking for. Mm-hmm. This means that ZYTO is actually very practitioner dependent, because what happens is you might, for instance, have candida showing up as a stressor. But if your practitioner isn't thinking and doesn't know, they might just say, okay, candida, let's look at what supplements are working well against your particular strain of candida that's flaring up. They might not think to scan for things like heavy metal toxicity or leaky gut or things that might be causing the candida. Mm-hmm. So it's very practitioner dependent as to the results you get on ZYTO. So that's one difference between the two, and I'll get to CyberScan in a minute. Just summarizing ZYTO and sort of how it's different. It's really good at allergies, environmental allergies, food allergies, chemical allergies. It doesn't always find the root cause of the problem. It's not very good at that. It's not good at things like parasites, hidden dental infections. Again, very practitioner dependent. If your practitioner thinks what might be causing this, then maybe you might get closer to the root of the problem, but ZYTO is generally good at what's bothering you now. It's not good at what fundamentally is causing that. ZYTO does distinguish chronic versus acute. So if something's acutely bothering you, like a cold, or if something's chronically bothering you, like Lyme disease, that will show up in your ZYTO scan, whether ZYTO thinks it's acute or chronic. And ZYTO is also better at supplement rankings. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is, say you want to know for my methylation, what supplement should I take, which one's the best? ZYTO is actually really pretty good at that. Mm-hmm. Again, practitioner dependent. If your practitioner has scanned for methylation issues, then the supplement rankings for ZYTO tend to be really pretty accurate and pretty effective. Mm-hmm. Okay, on the flip side for CyberScan, you don't have to have your hand on this mouse cradle the whole time for CyberScan. You just put it on this flat plate coil for a couple of seconds, and then you're done. Mm-hmm. And then CyberScan runs its computer program against the model that it's created from your hand. So your body doesn't stop sending signal. There's no limit to the amount of things you can scan on CyberScan. Mm-hmm. So that's very cool, because it becomes very practitioner independent. Mm-hmm. Your practitioner has a database of a bunch of stressors, all kinds of things and diseases and toxicities and things like that, and they can just scan the whole database. It's only limited by their computer and their processing power. Mm-hmm. So CyberScan then becomes pretty practitioner independent. The only thing that is practitioner dependent is, what does your practitioner's database look like? So for instance, the practitioner that we work with, I've gone in there nights and weekends scanning things into her database and helping her build up her database, and she's done the same thing too. So she has a big database, but some practitioners may not have a big database. But as long as their database is reasonable enough, or as long as you take the time to scan into their database, it becomes very practitioner independent, which is kind of cool. The treatments on CyberScan generally tend to be better. What I mean by that is both ZYTO and CyberScan offer treatment options, and I found that the treatments on CyberScan are much more effective than the treatments on ZYTO overall, as a general rule. CyberScan is better at emotions. in other words, if you have some emotional trauma, Cyberscan will often pick that up. I'll give you an example of that. We had a very good friend of ours suddenly pass away a couple weeks ago, and Cyberscan not only picked that up, but it picked up that I'm afraid of something like afraid of heart problems, and we think that friend had died of heart problems. So it was interesting to see Cyberscan actually pick that up out of the blue, and I saw that on my scan. I said, wow, it really picked up on that. Very cool.
Wow, that's
it's very
really
good in emotions, which is very useful for children, especially my oldest doesn't always express herself freely. You know, she just doesn't know how to express what she's feeling, and so Cyberscan can be amazing with that too. Okay, Cyberscan is also better at finding the chronic infections. It's much better at parasites. It's much better at hidden dental infections. It's also better at chronic infections, other chronic infections like Lyme, for example, and some of the GI bacteria. It's much more effective than ZYTO at finding that. The other interesting thing about Cyberscan, it doesn't distinguish acute and chronic illness the way ZYTO does, but it does level the stressors, meaning it tells you if it's at the mental level or the physical level or the levels in between. So it's kind of interesting. I'm still learning how to use that information and what it's good for, but it does offer that. Briefly, ZYTO treatments used to look like this. I've got some here. It used to look like little vials that you would wear around your neck. They would ZYTO laser would laser your treatment into these vials, and you would wear them around your neck, kind of a little bit old school Bioset type. And then they moved to these bracelets with holograms, and they would laser into the hologram. ZYTO also had a really good laser that would laser into things like your ring or your watch. They would laser into that as well, or into acupuncture meridian points or things like that. If your liver, for example, was clogged or bothering you or whatever, they could laser directly into that meridian. So that's a true, quote unquote. And Cyberscan, same thing. You can do your ring, you can do your watch, but our practitioner also does this salt water and programs the treatment into the salt water, which you can take orally or put on your skin. And it also does a credit card type magnetic stripe. The back is just card art done by my children, so that's nothing. But the magnetic strip on the back, they program that, and then this you can either put in your pocket to have with you all the time, or put it under your bed sheets and sleep with it. So I tend to be haphazard, and so I put it under my bed sheets and sleep with it. And then I do the water twice a day with that. And the ZYTO bracelets we would wear all the time, and the old vials we would wear all the time. But this is kind of old school now. Yeah. So those are the main differences. Long answer to a simple question.
Well, that's really interesting that they have the treatment is etched into the credit card or in the water. What does that encompass?
What does the treatment encompass? It encompasses, it depends on what you're presenting with. So it depends what I'm showing up with. So for example, last time I was there, I was showing up with this emotions from my friend dying. So some things about emotions, and mostly you could think of it as a homeopathic or a sort of a drainage homeopathic remedy kind of thing. So I got programmed for emotions. I got programmed for some GI stuff, which I think was maybe related to some of those emotions. I got programmed for my thyroid was tweaked, and I think that was just, I was really busy and working probably too much. And, you know, whatever you present with as stressors in your scan, whatever's stressing your body, that's what goes into your treatment. Okay. And then they can also sort of potentize it in Cyberscan to kind of like a homeopathic remedy. You could think of it that way. The ZYTO treatments are very similar, but usually, again, the practitioner can only pick a few things to treat in ZYTO, and that's a similar kind of thing. They kind of sort of potentize it and program it in.
And so, how often do you need to go? And I'm sure you have a baseline. You have to go in every so often to change the treatment, whatnot. So, how often do you usually go in to do a scan?
Well, it's a good question. I personally think you don't need to go unless you need it, unless you're
Hmm.
feeling bad. Our family is still doing some work specifically on chelation. We've been doing that for several years. And before chelation, we were working on Lyme and parasites and autism and all these other things, allergies. So we've been doing this for a long time.
Hmm.
And we do it every 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
But that's because we're working on things. So we're working on chelation and actively chelating at this point in time. Before we were actively working on Lyme and before we were actively working on parasites and so forth. I think, when we're done, quote unquote, with chelation, I'm hoping we'll just go a couple times a year, if anything. And the way I think of it now is we go, even though if you were to see us, we look perfectly healthy and act perfectly great. I call it disaster prevention.
Yeah.
And I also call it monitoring. So I monitor their minerals, how they're doing with the chelation. Is the chelating drug still pulling out metals, or is it pulling out some of their minerals and nutrients that their body needs? So I can see all that on Cyberscan or ZYTO. So I kind of monitor, and we also monitor things like kidney function, liver, excretion. We look at if they're blocked, if their body's blocked for detoxing and draining in any way. ZYTO and Cyberscan can find that out in advance before we end up with a UTI or a kidney infection or any other kind of problems or symptoms. So that's why I really call it, for us, disaster prevention.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. I mean, do you have to, see a practitioner in person to be able to put your hand on either of the scanning devices? Can you do it remotely at all?
So both of the technologies, ZYTO and Cyberscan, can be done remotely. ZYTO, my last understanding of it was that the patient needs to buy one of these mouse hand cradle things and have it, and the practitioner, they log on online and they communicate online. The practitioner can run the software and communicate with the patient remotely. So all the patient has to do is have this hand cradle thing. The hand cradle things come with a laser in them. Mm-hmm. So the practitioner can program that laser to treat the patient remotely. Mm-hmm. I don't think in ZYTO, I think the independent laser that they sell is actually much more effective than the hand cradle laser, but they just discontinued their laser, and I don't understand why. I think it was a big mistake. In my opinion, we're seeing much better results with their independent standalone laser is what I'm trying to say. Standalone laser as opposed to the laser in the hand cradle. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so if you buy the hand cradle, the patient buys the hand cradle, they can definitely be treated and scanned remotely. Mm-hmm. Cyberscan. Basically, for Cyberscan, it can be also done remotely, usually from blood, hair, or saliva, or any kind of bodily fluid or something like that. And they usually, what I understand is they're sending it into the practitioner, and then the practitioner can work with that. Okay. Scans that in as their model of the patient for Cyberscan, and then run the scan, run a treatment. And I'm not sure then I assume the practitioner would send the water and the credit card back. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's a way to treat them immediately remotely. Not sure about that.
And so you mentioned that the ZYTO and Cyberscan can tell you what supplements work for you. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So in ZYTO, for example, they scan your stressors, and then they scan what they call balancers. And those balancers are things that help with your stressors. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so you're coming up with candida, for example, or some Klebsiella, some GI thing. In your balancers, you'll get a sense of, okay, is grapefruit seed extract better, or is caprylic acid better, or is nystatin better? Mm-hmm. You'll get a sense, as long as your practitioner has those things in their database, you'll get a ranking of what's going to work the best against your strain of candida according to what ZYTO thinks. And I think that's just amazingly invaluable. I don't know about you, but I've got here at home probably about 300 supplements, bottles of whatever. And how do I know what drainage remedy or what methylation supplement, for example, I need or my children need, and it changes over time.
Yeah.
So things like methylation, I don't believe at all in this, you have this genetic mutation, you have to take this MTHFR supplement. I haven't seen that at all. I've seen that my methylation, my whole family has very different genetic mutations, of course. And I've seen that the supplement we need changes over time. It changes, depends on how much sleep I'm getting, how much stress I am. My methylation cycle can break in like 200 different places. So just because I have a specific genetic mutation doesn't mean that a specific supplement is always going to work for me. And ZYTO and Cyberscan both help me sort of scan my home supplements and what I already have and say, okay, what's going to work the best at this point in time? Mm-hmm. And that just saves me a lot of time. I also do energy testing, kinesiology at home. I do that, middle of the night, we're having something, common cold to Lyme flare-up, whatever it is, I can just, test at home. I found that my home testing is actually pretty consistent with what ZYTO and Cyberscan are telling us. I've pretty much seen 100% consistency between that. So back to your question, the supplements, I'm going to cheat a little bit and look on my, so I don't forget anything. The supplements that I think it's most useful for are detox and drainage, methylation, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and any sort of new medications that I don't know about. Someone's maybe recommending a supplement, things like that. So I can't really say for sure if a supplement is toxic, if it's got toxins or lead in it or who knows what. But if it's never testing well on ZYTO or Cyberscan, for any of the 4 people in my family, I can't 100% conclude that it's toxic, but I can kind of say, okay, that's probably not something we're going to keep around.
Yeah.
So it's very useful for that.
So can you test supplements on the Cyberscan?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's both of them. Everything. I mean, you can test, you should see database. We've got everything in there. Mm-hmm. Pills, homeopathic remedies, homemade kimchi, all, everything. I mean, I've scanned in all kinds of crazy stuff. I've made, this next week we have an appointment. I'm going to make some liposomal DMSA and we're going to scan that in and see how well that tests, which is kind of interesting. So we can kind of do some new experiments without actually experimenting on ourselves first. We can scan it in and see how it tests first. We've got I got my homemade food, grass-fed beef. I've got all prescription medications, steroid cream, all the antibiotics, parasite medications, parasite herbs, everything in there. Cyberscan, like I said, with ZYTO, you can only scan a sort of a limited number of things. But in Cyberscan, it's just limited by computing power. So my supplements list, if you look on my website, there's some examples you can click and see my actual results on some of the scans, and the supplements lists is sometimes 10 pages long worth of stuff.
So when you're testing a supplement, so you're testing the DMSA, I'm very curious about that, the liposomal DMSA. So what will it say? What does the readout say? That it's potent, it's potency, or it's not effective, or what does it say?
So it'll say that for me, given my stressors that showed up in my scan, it will level that, it will rank that on a scale. Cyberscan, for example, uses a scale of -12 to +12. Mm-hmm. +12 being very beneficial and -12 being not very beneficial. So it'll give me a numerical rating from +12 to -12 of how beneficial that is for me. On ZYTO, the numerical rating, it's the same thing. ZYTO, however, is, long story short, it is relative to a baseline level of your body. So ZYTO isn't necessarily between a fixed number. ZYTO might go up to 1,000. It might go up to 500. And so in ZYTO, what you're looking for is the most positive number, which has no limit. It just depends how your practitioner has scanned in your baseline, basically. So there's no numerical limit there. on ZYTO, but you're looking for the most positive number, and ZYTO can go out to 2 decimal places, and so you can see exactly which supplements are testing the best.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I need to get one. I need to get trained in that and get one. It just sounds so amazing, because I think it's in the future, and even what I do right now, it's very important to customize your supplement protocol for you, and that's going to become even more compelling in the future as we have CyberScan now, and in any future technologies, you're going to be able to really hone in on exactly what your body needs. And I think some of the tests we do, Nutri-Eval and whatnot, they're very limited, they're very indirect, they're very expensive. And so the CyberScan seems like an incredible tool, an incredible alternative that's far more advanced.
Yeah. The only downside to the supplements that I want to mention is that they don't really do dosing. So how many pills or how many drops per day? ZYTO does have a dosing function that you can try to dose the supplement on the person, but it doesn't really work that well, honestly. And CyberScan doesn't have the function at all.
Okay.
So, for example, if, say, on me, DMSA is testing really well, I still need to come home and dose it myself and figure out, okay, do I need 250 milligrams twice a day or 3 times a day, or what exactly do I need? You can in CyberScan scan in DMSA, for example, 62 milligrams, 125 milligrams, 250 milligrams, and then that kind of is your dosing function. But that's a pain for every supplement to scan in like all these different dosages. So, and summary is neither of the technologies are great at dosing. So I still use my home muscle testing kinesiology for dosing.
Yeah. And so I was reading about ZYTO and that you can actually find what kind of essential oils you need as well. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, you can scan all those in. Yeah, exactly. Which one's testing the best?
Yeah.
It's invaluable because there's so many of them. Yeah.
So what kind of issues are ZYTO and CyberScan really good at helping with? What kind of health issues and other problems?
Right. So I'm going to, again, just make sure I don't forget anything. So ZYTO is really good at allergies, all kinds of allergies, really unbelievably amazing. I literally went in there all stuffed up from my grass allergy and came out and sat in the grass and mowed the grass. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable with environmental allergies on ZYTO. Can't really comment on CyberScan because by the time we started using CyberScan, none of us had any more allergies, so I can't really comment on allergies for CyberScan, but allergies for ZYTO, if you have a practitioner, again, who knows what they're doing, can be unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. The one caveat with that is that your ZYTO allergy treatments won't stick until you heal your gut. So you can get rid of your allergies, in my case, for maybe a season, say the spring season, but it'll be back next year unless you heal your gut. And for some people, they'll get rid of their allergies, but it will only last a month or 2. And that's because they need to heal their gut. So now once we learned how to heal our gut, we did that. Now we just have no more allergies. It just hasn't been an issue for us for many, many years. So the ZYTO is very good at allergies. They're both really good at detox and drainage pathways. So things that supplements can't really help you with, like energetic excretion pathways, and really weird ones too. Like we might find that I'm stuck in my pancreas or my spleen, and the symptoms are just kind of nothing I can quantify or nothing that I can explain. But after I get that drainage treatment for my spleen or my pancreas, I just feel better, and it's just weird. I mean, they can really find these drainage and detox pathways that I don't know how else to find. So really good at that, really good with methylation. ZYTO in particular had, or at least our practitioner had, methylation treatments in ZYTO. So she could treat you with all the Yasco RNA foods and all of those things. And those methylation treatments, I feel like after we did those treatments, we didn't need as many supplements for methylation. And that was a big deal. We didn't see the fatigue, and then I'd figure out it was methylation. That whole methylation problem just kind of went away, and we do still what I call disaster prevention. In other words, every time we go to ZYTO or Cyberscan, we look for it and make sure if something was coming up, we may or may not take a supplement. But the energetic treatments for methylation actually really worked for us. Monitoring and fixing detox organ functions before they break. So kidney, bladder, things like UTIs, we'd get that right before it ever happened, kind of thing, especially, for instance, while chelating, when a lot of metals are going through that area, right? You can tend to have all kinds of bacterial and yeasty flare-ups, and we just catch those right before they even happen. So again, back to disaster prevention. Mineral and vitamin deficiencies, this is one we're doing right now with our chelation. We're looking at, are we pulling metals or are we pulling vital nutrients? And ZYTO and Cyberscan are pretty good at that. Ranking supplements, we already went through that. Acute viral and bacterial exposures. So if you just, say for example, this is a good one, you get that CDC form home from school saying that someone in the class had hand, foot, and mouth disease, and then you're like, well, does my kid have it? Should I keep him home? What's going on? Well, ZYTO and Cyberscan can tell you. They can not only tell you, if they were exposed, in other words, if their immune system was exposed to it, they can also tell you what will work best against it to get rid of it. So things like the flu, the hand, foot, mouth disease, all those things that come home from school, and you just want to know, are they getting it? Are they exposed? They can tell you those things.
Wow.
Yeah. So that summarizes what I'm a fan of with the ZYTO and Cyberscan.
So what are you not a fan of? What is ZYTO and Cyberscan not good at helping with?
So I actually have almost an equally long list of things it's not so good at.
Yeah.
So the first thing is chasing gut bacteria. And sometimes I feel, especially on ZYTO, like we're just chasing gut bacteria around. And every time you go in, you're just seeing, oh, their candida flared up. Okay, you whap that mole back in the hole. And now you got Klebsiella flaring up. And you knock that back in the hole. And then you just chase around the gut bacteria without finding the root cause. And again, this is back to being a little bit practitioner dependent. You can go every time and kind of waste your time and money, in my opinion, and not find the root cause of those gut bacteria. Yeah, you feel better once a candida gets whapped back down, and yeah, you feel better once a Klebsiella gets whapped back down, but you're not getting to the fundamental root cause of the problem. So sometimes I feel like they chase bacteria around. Chasing food allergies around, again, ZYTO can really help with food allergies, but they'll just come back if you don't heal the gut. And ZYTO won't tell you need to heal your gut. It'll only tell you you're sensitive to this food, and I can treat you for it, and you should probably stop eating it for a while to lose your sensitivity to it. But that sensitivity will come right back if you don't heal your gut. So again, kind of not getting to the root cause of the problem. Probiotics. This is a difficult one. ZYTO will sometimes recommend probiotics specifically with FOS or inulin to help with something. Maybe let's just say E. coli. Okay, but what it won't realize is that the FOS or inulin in that probiotic will flare up your candida. So it doesn't see into the future. It just looks at, okay, this is stressing you right now. So what can I do to help that? But it doesn't see into the future that some of the other things in that probiotic might actually cause other things to flare up. So it doesn't see into the future. I generally, if ZYTO or Cyberscan are testing well on a probiotic, I take it really with a grain of salt. I'm really careful about that. Specifically the FOS and inulin probiotics, I'm very careful with those.
They have the prebiotics in them.
Yeah. The other thing actually related to probiotics that again on the same lines is that I am now actually of the opinion that probiotics feed parasites. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's just been my experience with them. So again, ZYTO and Cyberscan won't tell you that. They'll just say, oh, it'll help your E. coli, but it won't realize that it might feed parasites or might flare up some other bacteria. So they don't see into the future. Hidden dental infections. This is a big deal because a lot of us have them. And I had them. A lot of us have wisdom teeth removed or root canals or things like extracted teeth. Most of them, unfortunately, in this country are usually infected. ZYTO and Cyberscan, ZYTO especially, will never find them. Okay, I can pretty much say that. You just won't find them. And Cyberscan is actually better, but not 100% either. But Cyberscan is much better at the hidden dental infections than ZYTO is. Mm-hmm. And again, those can be a fundamental cause for things like thyroid, adrenal issues especially.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can find Lyme or other kinds of infections, but the dental infections eluded. Do you know why that is?
Well, actually, ZYTO doesn't find Lyme either. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is Lyme takes down the immune system, and so that leaves the terrain open for candida and all kinds of other viral and bacterial things to flare up, and that's what ZYTO will find. Yeah. It won't actually find the Lyme. So we had Lyme for a long time, years undiagnosed, and ZYTO never found it. So ZYTO won't find Lyme.
Cyberscan?
Either. Cyberscan's a little better, but again, it's the same situation where the Lyme may come up, but it won't come up at a very high level. So I talked about in the scan ranking on Cyberscan, it goes from 100% down to 0%. It's in percentage, and so it might find Lyme, but it's probably not going to find it at 100%. It's going to find it as a 30% stressor on your body. And our practitioner Cyberscan database has so many things in it that realistically, from a file standpoint, we can only print out the 199% items, and that is already 20 pages. Yes. So we're never even going to look at the things that rank at the 30% level.
Okay.
So on Cyberscan, it'll probably find Lyme, but it's going to be so low and so on page 1,500 that you're never going to see it there either. And really, the Lyme, for example, might be the fundamental cause of the 100% stressors. But Cyberscan, both of these technologies are not really great at root cause problems like Lyme, hidden dental infections, parasites. They're just not great at the root cause.
Sounds like they're great at a lot of other things. So that's good.
Yes, exactly. So that was next on my list. So not good at hidden dental infections, not good at Lyme disease. Antibiotics and medications. So sometimes ZYTO and Cyberscan will come up and say amoxicillin is testing the best against whatever's bothering you. Again, these things can't see into the future, so they can't see that taking the amoxicillin might actually shift your balance such that you end up in a worse place than you started. Yeah. So again, they'll recommend the amoxicillin for whatever is stressing you on their scan, but they won't see into the future to see that if you actually take it, you'll end up sicker because other things will flare up.
Yeah.
So they just don't see into the future. Supplement dosing, we talked about that. They're not good at dosing supplements. And the other thing related to supplements actually is they don't test the supplements in combinations. Meaning, let's just take some RX drugs. Say there's a parasite medication testing really well, and say there's amoxicillin testing really well. Can you take both of them? Well, ZYTO and Cyberscan don't really tell you that. If you take both of them, will it ruin your kidney drainage, or your liver will stop functioning, or who knows what, right? They won't tell you that. So they only test that particular medication or supplement works well against the things bothering you. They don't test them in combination. Okay. So I get this question a lot. Well, how many parasite medications can I take at a time? And ZYTO and Cyberscan can't really tell you that. And for that, again, I resort back to my home muscle testing for dosing and for combinations of medications that I'm worried about taking together, or that I think in my head might cause some problems. I always test them by hand together. So let's see. Freaking you out is another negative of these technologies. It's extremely easy to freak out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the things that come up on the scan especially if it's your first time, you may have nightmares and not be able to sleep. I mean, it's really unbelievable what will come up. I mean, polio comes up, all kinds of things come up. Do we have polio? Not that I know of, but have we been exposed to it? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Is our immune system fighting it? Maybe. I don't know. I can't say. But it's kind of scary sometimes when I see things like polio, pneumonia coming up, but we have no symptoms. So I'm kind of like, well, we have no symptoms of that, so let's not worry about it. Yeah. But sometimes then you start to wonder, is that really accurate or not? I don't know. Is it just our immune system's fighting it and has won the battle, or is it totally erroneous and false information? I really don't know. But it's really easy to make yourself paranoid if you look at the scans and all the nasty things that you come up with. And believe me, I mean, my family functions really well. We're doing great, and we still come up with all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah. And you have to keep it in perspective. I mean, I do hair mineral analysis and metals urine testing on clients, and they get really anxious about the results, get really worried, but it's just information is power, and it gives you a roadmap of how you can improve your health. So it's really, you have to keep it in perspective, not get worried about it. You're on the track to healing your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a whole new level of paranoia.
Yeah, I know.
A whole new level of scary once you see some of these results. And again, you can click on my website and check out some of mine and see if they scare you, and it's not even you, it's me. So definitely check mine out, if you're ever thinking of doing it, just so you don't freak yourself out.
What's your website?
Debugyourhealth.com. Okay. And if you click on there's a tab called ZYTO there. Mm-hmm. I've got some videos of me explaining my results, and you can click and download the results yourself, the PDF files, and follow along with it. And again, it's good to look at someone else's before you do it, just so you don't freak yourself out and you know what to expect. Yeah.
So does insurance cover a test like this?
So I found that it depends on your practitioner and what codes they bill. Mm-hmm. And for ZYTO is not an FDA-approved device, but that doesn't seem to have mattered. It seemed to have only mattered what codes our practitioner billed. And for us, we had Aetna PPO, and given the codes our practitioner billed, it was pretty much covered.
Wow.
Yeah, not always 100%, and then, I don't know, it gets complicated with deductibles and things like that, and but it was pretty well covered. Cyberscan is actually an FDA-approved device. Don't ask me how they did that. And it still doesn't seem to matter. It seems to still matter what codes our practitioner is billing. And now we have United Healthcare PPO, and we just switched. And I'm kind of waiting to see. We're fighting them to get it covered. They want more information and all this and that. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to cover it. So it really depends on your practitioner and what codes they bill. And the reason I haven't gotten my own ZYTO or Cyberscan setup is basically because the insurance has pretty much covered it with the practitioner. And with the practitioner, I have the benefit of her database and the things she's scanned in, and the benefit of her other clients' databases and what they've scanned in. Yeah. So I don't have to sit here and reinvent the wheel and scan and make my whole database. I have the benefit of hers and her clients' database. And then another reason, actually, going back to the question about remotely doing these things, when I go into the office, I almost always have a few things to take with me to scan in. Like next time I go, I'm going to take my liposomal DMSA that I've made and scan that in. So I've almost always got a couple of things I want to scan in, and that's a little bit easier if you're in the practitioner's office. So the answer is insurance is covering it if your practitioner has the right codes.
I was very surprised by that. I thought for sure it was going to be a flat out no, because it's so cutting edge. And
yeah,
so, yeah, my question is, you're saying that each practitioner has their own database. Why wouldn't there be one single cohesive database to, further benefit everyone doing the test?
There are actually for ZYTO and Cyberscan. They both come with a database, quote unquote. I don't know the financials behind who gets in their database and who doesn't. I don't know anything about that. I don't know why certain products are in their database and certain other products aren't. But I can say that in both cases, our practitioner has a significant amount of other items that she or her clients have scanned in. So their databases are kind of minimal, in my opinion. And for some reason, I don't know why, certain product lines that I think are important are excluded.
Okay. Okay. So is there anything else that you wanted to add about our discussion with these technologies?
Let's see. No, I just want to add that there on, again, back to my website. Again, I'm not trying to promote my website, but there are examples on my website of how I actually interpret the results, what the different numbers and levels and all the details, the nitty-gritty details of once you get your results, what do you do with them and how do you read them? Those details and examples are all on my website. You can click on them and check them out. So I highly recommend that for your first time, because it took us literally years to understand what is it good for, what isn't it good for, how do I use these results.
Okay. No, everyone is going to want to know that. So I'm glad you're giving us links to your website, because I'm going to like check it out myself as well, because I had never heard of this technology before I was introduced to you. So I'm really, really fascinated. I'm going to go do a scan myself. Absolutely.
Cool.
So I have a question I like to ask all of my guests. What do you think is the most pressing health issue in the world today?
Right. I think the most pressing health issue is the chronic illnesses that the medical community can't solve. So that's pretty much what our family's been through. We didn't know exactly what was wrong. We went everywhere and no one figured it out and no one helped us. And I generalize that because under these chronic illnesses fall all kinds of things that we're not diagnosing or treating, like hidden dental infections, parasites, Lyme, leaky gut, detox, all these things that the standard medical community just doesn't understand, doesn't know how to diagnose, and doesn't know how to treat, and they're not learning it in medical school. And that to me is the biggest challenge that we face.
Yeah, I think it's a travesty. It makes me so sad when I have clients coming to me and they've been to so many different doctors and they don't want to just take a medication and cover up their symptoms. They want to address the underlying root cause and they want to get rid of it forever. They want to eliminate the health issue or the problem, not just take diabetic medication or what have you. It's sad to me that, more doctors don't take, their education into their own hands. Yeah, after medical school, ask questions, be curious, seek out some further education, some functional diagnostic education. But some people, they just aren't curious. They kind of feel like what they learned in medical school, that word is gold and everything else is quackery. And I've met many of these doctors myself and been treated by them for various things. And, it's a huge, huge problem. And that's why we are doing what we're doing to try to get that word out there and, you have to take the power into your own hands. Your health is your responsibility. No one is going to hold your hand and cure you. You have to educate yourself, and because you're your body, you're the patient, you're going to be the most motivated to heal yourself, not another person. So
right. I absolutely agree with you. And I want to add one thing to it, is that my experience with people coming out of medical school is that they know how to pattern match. They know how to say, okay, this symptom matches to this drug. They are very good at memorizing and very good at pattern matching. But what they're not good at is actually thinking and critical thinking and reasoning and debugging. They just never learn those skills. And I feel like, ironically, my engineering skills from MIT and critical thinking and experimentation and thinking skills are what saved my family's health.
Yeah, because it's true. A lot of the doctors go into medical school and they maybe have a photographic memory or they're very good at test taking or what have you, and they can whiz through medical school, but that does not make a good practitioner or healer. Absolutely not. So why don't you tell our listeners more about where they can find you and where they can get a ZYTO or a Cyberscan?
So they can find me at debugyourhealth.com. Everything I know is on that website, all for free. Again, I'm not making any referral links or any money off of it. It's It's just out there for free. Everything for free and completely independent and unbiased. Where can they get ZYTO or Cyberscan? I don't know. I have a practitioner here locally that I've been working with for this whole time. I could recommend that person. If you click on my website and click on download the supplement scans and stuff like that, you'll see her contact information on there. She does book out. She's pretty popular, so I don't want to make her so that I can't even get an appointment. Yeah. But I don't know, search online for a local practitioner. I do highly recommend going locally just because I think the treatments are stronger if you can actually scan in your ring and your watch and wear that all day in addition to the water and the card. I think that's a little bit better. So, and you can scan in your own supplements from home. Maybe you even have some weird things like some expired supplements and you want to see how they scan and if they're still good, for example. So some things you may just want to take with you. So I recommend finding someone local. Look for reviews, word of mouth, but also check Yelp. There are more and more practitioner reviews on Yelp. And worst case, if you can't find anyone, go to my website on the ZYTO tab and click on some of my supplements lists and the PDF files, and you'll see my practitioner there.
Yeah, I guess I laughed. I just assumed there'd be like a database, or if you go on cyberscan.com, you could find a list of practitioners or people that have been certified.
It could be. Yeah. I haven't done that.
Okay, yeah, because you already have one, so you don't know.
It could be, but for ZYTO in particular, it's very practitioner dependent. So I would be really careful on ZYTO. We did have the experience of my oldest child being turned into a monster because they treated her for something, but they forgot the drainage and detox, and big deal. So for ZYTO, I'd be really careful. I'd still go look for reviews and look for recommendations on ZYTO. Cyberscan is more practitioner independent, but again, you still want a practitioner that has a really good database. Yeah. So.
Oh, well, those are very good tips. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was, I think, one of the more interesting podcasts that I've done because it seems like this technology has such a profound impact on your health. I mean, it just sounds so fascinating. So thank you for informing us about that.
Thanks for having me, Wendy. It was my pleasure.
And listeners, if you want to learn more about me, you can go to liveto110.com and learn more about my healing and detox program, mineralpower.com. Thanks so much for listening to the Live to 110 podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Wendy.
Well, it's very nice to meet you at the Bulletproof Biohacking Conference. You were there, you were speaking, correct?
Likewise, yeah, I was speaking. I actually gave a talk about a testosterone experiment that I've done and taught people how to raise their testosterone while in the room.
Nice. Well, you're gonna teach us that today, because I know a lot of men out there, especially coming to me, they're looking to have more muscle mass and increase their libido and just overall feel better by increasing their testosterone levels. So, but let's talk a little bit about you first. How did you venture into becoming a biohacker?
So I actually come from professional sports. So this is my story. I grew up being a basketball player in southern Germany, and I was tall enough. I'm about 6'7" and 220, 230, and big guy, could handle the ball, could shoot it, and I got a scholarship in the United States. So I went over there. I spent my first 2 years at Oregon Tech, smaller school in the West, and then transferred to Boston University, BU, the Terriers, and finished up my college career there. And while over there, I was really fascinated already by how, I'd say, even in college, which is amateurs pretty much, we're not paid to play, but still we had a huge coaching staff. We were trained, we were using functional methods. We were pretty much doing CrossFit before CrossFit even existed, and tracking ourselves. And every month we received this sheet with markers, strength markers, or how fast we would sprint, some of our blood markers, and our physical trainers that tracked us over the course of the preseason at least, and saw if we improved and how the training worked out, and if we gained strength, if we became more fit in a way. And I was really fascinated by this tracking aspect. And I noticed that just the fact that I tracked something already helped me improve, because it made me aware, it motivated me to keep going, it showed me progress. And that's kind of how I got into the quantified self scene. So that was around the years when Kevin Kelly started the quantified self movement in San Francisco, and with Gary Wolf. And at one point, then I went to a quantified self conference just because I was interested. And so now quantified self and biohacking are quite related. I would say quantified self is focused more on the tracking aspect, and biohacking is then using technology data in order to tweak and improve the screws of your body, to upgrade body and mind. And so this was sort of the natural progression from sports to quantified self.